Hezbollah did not agree to end its war, as some international supporting has suggested. Now, US envoy Amos Hochstein is in Lebanon for ceasefire talks, and according to the latest reporting, some Lebanese politicians are now saying that they agreed to a ceasefire, with some extra conditions added for good measure. But let's be very clear here. The Lebanese politicians aren't the ones making a war on Israel and aren't the ones to make a deal. It's Iran's terror army in Lebanon, Hezbollah, that is attacking Israel and that Israel is currently fighting inside Lebanon. And, media speculation aside, there is no confirmation that Hezbollah has agreed to anything. So if Hezbollah has said it agrees to conditions it has made unilaterally, or if Hezbollah said it agrees to a current reality established by Israel on the ground in Lebanon, that isn't an agreement. That is simply Hezbollah finally seeing the reality around them as people continue to suffer thanks to the war that they started on October 8th when they joined with Hamas to attack Israel. And any agreement cannot be a return to October 8th, 2023. That time has passed. An agreement must instead remove Hezbollah's Iranian-provided rockets from threatening Israel and cut off new Iranian weapons smuggled in from Syria so Hezbollah can't attack again next year, just like they did last year. Hezbollah has since October 8th fired 16,000 Iranian rockets, missiles and drones at us from inside Lebanon. And let's just consider for a moment what the status quo was on October 8th of 2023. On October 8th, the UN Security Council Resolution 1701 was not enforced by the UN or frankly by anyone else. On October 8th, Hezbollah was dug in on Israel's border, even next to UNIFIL positions. On October 8th, Hezbollah had 200,000 Iranian bombs aimed at Israel's houses. And October 8th, Hezbollah had deliveries of Iranian weapons direct from Syria into Lebanon. And current reporting says that Israel is demanding that any agreement exceed those 1701 conditions. An agreement may call for US and French forces to do what UNIFIL simply didn't and frankly couldn't. An agreement may call to dismantle Hezbollah's terror infrastructure throughout and not just along Israel's border. Now, an agreement may call for Israeli military action in Lebanon in the event of violations like arms smuggling or Hezbollah's return to the border. And Hezbollah is under immense pressure militarily, economically, and politically. So now is the time to ensure that Hezbollah cannot regroup, rearm, and again threaten Israel's people. For a peaceful tomorrow, we cannot repeat what led to the war yesterday. Now, meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, the usual suspects continue to claim there is not enough aid and continue to blame Israel for the problem persisting. But the US keeps saying that Israel is doing a lot. And even UNRWA now admits that Israel sends plenty of aid and Gazans are the ones stopping it from being delivered. Just yesterday, UNRWA said the 109 aid trucks were violently looted as they entered the Gaza Strip, with only 11 trucks getting through and 99 being taken and stolen. Trucks' tires were shot out in order to stop them, and drivers were forced at gunpoint to unload supplies, and some were even shot. Vehicles were extensively damaged, and this all occurred inside the Gaza Strip, outside regions of Israeli control. This isn't new. The UN months ago confirmed similar attacks on aid. So who took the 99 aid trucks? Well, UNRWA didn't say, but we can make an educated guess as to who's behind it all. Hamas terrorists were caught discussing taking so much aid that their warehouses were running out of space. And Hamas has earned what is reported to be over $500 million from selling that aid back to their own people inside Gaza. The more aid that gets looted, the more aid that groups like UNRWA demand enters, and the more aid gets to be taken, seized, stolen, and then sold by Hamas and their affiliates. Because for Hamas, Gazan suffering is the feature, not the bug. And as Hamas enriches itself from its own people's suffering, Israel is constantly working with aid organizations, including groups like the World Food Programme, to avoid the aid theft and to ensure sufficient aid continues to feed the people of Gaza. All right, well, on that note, let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
Thank you, Asher. Our first question is from Instagram. Was mainstream media lying about Hezbollah?
Not entirely sure what angle you're looking for in that question in terms of lying about Hezbollah. Could I maybe get a little bit more clarity?
I think specifically it's referring to the peace agreement.
understand the question now. In regards to the peace agreement, it's an interesting thing to note about how reporting has been framed. We've seen a lot of headlines that have suggested that Hezbollah has agreed to a ceasefire or that Lebanon is agreeing to a ceasefire. But we need to be very clear as to what's happening behind those headlines and go beyond simply the one-sentence headline statement that we're seeing there. What needs to be understood is that underneath all that is the true details of what's actually happening, which is that Hezbollah is choosing to agree. And in fact, let's be clear here, this is all reporting. This has not been confirmed by any official sources. But Lebanese politicians or Hezbollah may be stating that they are willing to agree to a certain ceasefire under certain specific conditions, with additional addendums added into plans that have been put forth by the US or Israel, which really, frankly, isn't anything. It's not agreeing to a ceasefire. If you create your own terms and say you agree to them, it is not agreeing to a ceasefire which involves two, or in this case, probably three or even four parties to come to the table and actually make something sustainable. And that's the key that we're talking about here. Israel has come and put forward a series of conditions which would allow the over 60,000 displaced peoples from Israel's north who have not been able to return home for over a year now to go back safely into their homes without the threat of hundreds of thousands of rockets bearing down on them at any second. With that threat removed, maybe we can start talking about shared ceasefires, conditions that would allow some sort of semblance of peace with all the conditions that we've suggested already need to be put in place. But that's not what we're hearing from the Lebanese authorities, or more importantly, from Hezbollah themselves, or perhaps their puppet masters in Iran, in order to truly reach a ceasefire. And that is what a lot of the reporting is failing to do, and it's something we need to watch very closely.
Also from Instagram, why doesn't the IDF just go all in and massively bomb Iran?
Look, we're talking about a very complex situation when it comes to the entirety of the Middle East, and particularly when we talk about Iran, which is a powerful, full military state which has had decades preparing for all sorts of military invasions, coercions, and actions that could happen inside Israel or could happen around the region. So much so that they have shown increased desire to achieve an atomic weapon, to take nuclear weapons and bring that into the fray. This is not a simple situation to be dealing with here. And frankly, it's not Israel's goal to simply bomb Iran flat and take on a sort of a separate sovereign nation. Israel's goals in this are to provide peace, stability, and security for its people and its nation. I mean, let's remember here, this war was started when Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th, infiltrating into the country, massacring 1,200 Israelis as they slept in their beds, and starting off this horrible chain of events where we see ourselves today, over a year later, still embroiled in a multi-front war, a seven-front war that Israel is frankly still facing. Iran is the master behind the throne, as it were, the power behind the throne in all this, dictating everything that is happening. But Israel's ultimate goals are to reach a sense of normalcy and stability. And if Iran could come to the table and understand that, it might be able to be some sense of achievable peace, stability, sustainability, whatever it may be. But frankly, that's not what we're seeing from Iran, and it's not in Israel's interest to work for anything but that, and that's exactly what Israel is hoping to achieve.
This is a question we received from YouTube. Have you noticed a change in attitude in Lebanon from politicians now that Hezbollah are degraded? Will they be emboldened to speak freely now?
Hard to say what's happening in the political echelons inside Lebanon. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Hezbollah was so entrenched in the political system in Lebanon. As we always say, Hezbollah was a military with a state attached to it. They had so much influence and power, both militarily, politically, and otherwise within the state of Lebanon, that it's hard to sometimes discern which political figures are distinct from Hezbollah itself, which operate independently and which are involved with sort of the wider Hezbollah political and military apparatus. As it stands right now, as I said earlier, really, at the end of the day, Hezbollah itself and what remains of it needs to come to the table. They need to take responsibility. They need to take ownership of ending this war, being able to find some sort of sustainable ceasefire in which Israel is able to feel safe and Israelis are able to return to their homes. This is the goal of Israel, and whether that's occurring within the political echelons inside Beirut or whether that's happening in southern Lebanon, in the military fields on the ground, this is what needs to change because the status quo is not maintainable. And at the end of the day, Hezbollah are the ones responsible, and the political leaders in Beirut, inside Lebanon, need to understand that and help to bring about a sustainable ceasefire for the people of Israel, but frankly also for the people of Lebanon.
Cindy on Instagram asked, what does it mean for negotiations that Hamas leaders left Qatar and went to Turkey? Has Turkey always allowed Hamas leaders to reside in the country, and can pressure be put on Turkey?
Unfortunately, we've seen a bit of a shift over the last few years and decades with President Erdogan over in Turkey taking an increasingly hardline, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas approach to much of his political rhetoric and machinations. It's a pretty sad turn of events to see Hamas leadership being housed inside Turkey, but frankly, it's not something new to Turkey. It's something that has existed for a while. And in terms of pressure, well, there are ultimately options from Israel, but mostly from the wider international community, the democratic, peace-loving, liberal-ordered community that should stand forward and say to countries like Qatar, Turkey, Iran, and others that housing terror leaders within your state is not acceptable, that it should not be an acceptable status quo, and they should apply pressure through sanctions, through political pressure, through social pressure, and other forms in order to inform those countries that it is not okay to house these terror leaders. It is not okay to protect them, particularly while their group is fighting such a heinous war against Israel and threatening Israeli lives, still holding 101 hostages inside Israel. This sort of status quo is frankly not acceptable and not acceptable the world over. And I think more and more people are realizing this, but the pressure needs to be collectively kept on Erdogan himself and Turkey as a whole in order to understand that this status quo of housing Hamas leadership simply cannot continue.
Thank you. This is the final question. Jake from Instagram asks, is there any updates on the citizen spokesdog Simcha? When can we see him doing some more content?
Certainly, citizen spokesdog Simcha has been digging away to find the latest stories. He's pouring the ground, he's inspecting the area. His nose is to the proverbial grindstone, finding the absolute best stories about everything that's happening in and around the world of the Israeli citizen spokesperson's office. I show you there's some fantastic content coming down the pipeline, but he's but one pup. And I recommend that all those who have potential spokesdogs out there in the community and our audience watching, make sure that you get them out there, helping to make that content, helping to let Simcha know that he's not barking alone, that you're out there helping support him and his work. So I would love to see some of your content. Feel free to send it in. You can send it directly to the Israeli Citizen Spokesdog or to any of our channels, and we'll make sure that we see it and get Simcha to have a good look to know that he's certainly not alone in fighting the good fight, and he's barking up the correct tree this time. But thank you so much for watching. That is all we have time for today. I'd also just like to make a quick announcement before we wrap up today that our new Spanish language channels links are in the description and across our platform. So please go and take a look for any of you Spanish speakers out there. And meanwhile, Giving Tuesday is just 2 weeks away. So if you could please keep an eye out for how you can contribute to our campaign. We're really looking to gear up as we get towards the end of the year and get the message out. But that is all we have time for now. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. on the East Coast. I'm Asher Westropp-Evans. Thanks for watching.